Hello, everyone. Welcome to Vanlife and Chill. I'm the host, Forrest Stevens, and today I'm talking with Nomad Brad, and we talk about the community of van life and his experience being a videographer for Bob Wells from Cheap RV Living. And we also talk about sort of the different ways that he makes money now while living on the road. He tells some really fun and interesting stories. Having done this for a couple years now, he has quite a bit of experience living in a van. And so this is an interesting one, and I hope you guys enjoy.
So I am Nomad Brad, and so it's been a long journey now. For 4 years, I've been traveling the country in a van, and it all started for me 4 years ago. I had all the stuff, that I had been told and that society told me would make me happy, and all the benchmarks that you're supposed to achieve. I owned a home, I had a business, I had some cars and stuff, and I just one day realized like I'm really unhappy, and I felt like all these possessions were kind of ruling over me, and I was so busy maintaining everything that I never had time to do the things I wanted to do. And at the time I was like 30, 31, 32, and I just felt, well, I was like, is this it? Is my life over? Do I just do this and slowly get older? And I was just like, there's no way. And so I think for me, I had to just do a complete 180. There was no like gradual path of, how do I make my life better and maybe take more time off. I was just like, I'm out, I'm getting out of the system. And so I just sold everything I owned and bought a van on eBay and converted it between a Home Depot parking lot and and then my dad's driveway, and hit the road, man. And I haven't looked back.
What was it that you wanted to do? You said that your life had been a little bit too busy and sort of you were overcome with your possessions, but what was it that you were that lifestyle was limiting you to do?
So I think more than limiting me, I think it just had me wound up. And so I felt it difficult to relax. And so the way it started is I was working like 6 days a week, and I would get burnt out. And so on my little time off that I could take, I would go out into nature. I would go to the parks. I would go to the river. I lived in Oregon, so nature was close and abundant. And it would be more and more time that I would try to spend out in nature, and then less time I wanted to be back in the city doing, all the business stuff. And I remember the time that it really shifted for me. I had an SUV at the time, and I just drove down to Target, kind of a local store, like a home goods store, and I bought like a mattress topper and a cooler and just a bunch of snacks, and just drove out into the mountains, and drove up an old logging road, found kind of a clearing, and just parked for like 2 days with no cell phone, and just sat out and watched the stars, and just really kind of reconnected. And I realized at that point, I want to figure out how I can make this my reality instead of the reality I was currently experiencing.
So that was the main sort of catalyst that got you thinking. What was it? So you didn't move into that SUV though right away. You got this van on eBay. Um, what what kind of gave you the idea that the van was the way to go to begin with?
Yeah, so that was the catalyst where I realized I was ready to make massive change. So I went back and I went through the process of selling everything, and then I rented like a small apartment just so I could figure things out. And that's when I just dove into YouTube, and I looked at all kinds of lifestyles, and I looked into like digital nomad stuff where you just have a backpack and a laptop. But at this time I didn't have any kind of uh, like digital skills. All my skills were very much physical, and so I wasn't sure how to transition into some kind of a truly digital lifestyle yet. And my dad had been retired for about 10 years already, and he bought an RV. And so I had drove down a few times before this to visit him, just hanging out in the desert, doing whatever. And so I kind of realized the nomad lifestyle was pretty sweet. And so for me, that was kind of the next best option. Plus, it's a lower overhead, because I knew I didn't want to be in an apartment. So it's like I don't want to be renting an apartment. I could spend that same money and be living on the road. So for me, I guess it was a pretty low barrier to entry. to just kind of slide into van life.
Nice. Yeah. And maybe let's go back to that. I know it was 4 years ago, but can I maybe get an idea of what was going through your mind that first night in the van? And was there some excitement, some nerves? How were you feeling moving into the van for the first time?
So yeah, the first night in the van, it was exciting. Um, because in my mind, I'm starting a huge adventure. I mean, that's the minute you kind of first close the door on the driver's side and you're like taking off, you realize anything you want to do is possible. There's no plans, there's no schedule, and so it was just super exciting. And my first voyage, I left my dad's in Arizona, and I just did the whole West Coast from San Diego all the way up to the Olympic rainforest in Washington. And definitely that first trip was like there was a kind of a rite of passage there, and it was pretty sweet.
That's awesome. So even though you decided to sort of do the van life and the low overhead and things like that, you still, I mean, how did you support yourself early on in van life financially?
Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, I had some savings. I did sell my house and my business, so I had used savings to buy the van. I converted the van myself, and then I just floated off savings for like the first 9 months. And I mean, I was spending like, $1,000 a month or less, for all my living expenses. And so I was just kind of, barely poking away at my savings and traveling. But so the other thing that I found out once I hit the road is there's a lot of opportunities to find work and to do that, to have income. But until you get out there, you won't necessarily find them. And so it was definitely lesson in kind of just trusting the process, and then trusting myself that I, have marketable skills, and that I would be able to create value for somebody else who would then, compensate me with money.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sort of, you have to go out on the limb a little bit by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I found. Yeah, which the whole thing was out on a limb. I mean, my parents thought I was crazy for selling everything. So I have a long history of just doing stuff without, much concern for the, potential ramifications.
Nice. Yeah. So, just a quick little interruption from the podcast. I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm going on a cross country tour and I'll be filming with as many people as possible. So, if you have a van that you've converted or you're living van life, I would love to hear from you. There's some contact information in the description below, and let's meet up and film a van tour. What's your current rig then?
I started in a van. I was in the van for a year and a half. I sold it and bought a short bus, and then I was in that for about a year, and then I sold that, and now I'm in a 12-foot box truck. So it's an old moving truck that I converted into a house. So this is my favorite platform in the sense that it's wide and tall, so you can fully stand up, and it feels more like a mini condo rather than like a vehicle. So I really love it. It's a good platform.
What's your design layout and kind of some of the components that went into your build?
The main thing I wanted was to have it be kind of a minimalist space. So I kept it pretty open. There's not a lot of, cupboards and closets. But one thing I really like about it is in the very back by the door, I have double bench seats that slide out into the bed. So in the first two builds, I didn't have anywhere to like hang out, with my nomad friends. It's pretty cramped. But now I have my bed that converts into benches. So I've had like 6 or 7 people hanging out inside my rig, and it doesn't feel crowded. It still feels like an open space. So I think for me, it was really important to be able to have a spot to hang out. Because like when I was in my van, I mean, there was nowhere. You had a bed and a little spot with a sink, and that was it. I mean, you're literally outside all the time. And so I was happy to have a space where I could be indoors and then not feel restricted and kind of move around.
And what about your sort of your power? I mean, you now work remotely and digitally and stuff. So, what are some of your power setups in your van?
The unique thing about this van is it's all electric. So like for cooking, I use electricity, and I do that because I have quite a bit of solar that can fit on the roof. So I have 600 watts of solar panels, 400 amp hours of battery, and so that gives me all the juice I need to run a fridge, electric cooking appliances, my laptop, all that kind of stuff. And the nice thing is you don't have to go refill, a gas generator or propane tanks. So I'm really enjoying the all electric setup.
Nice. And so by the sounds of it, it sounds to me like you're sort of have really immersed yourself into the van life community. I mean, it was important to you to have this build be functional so that you could sort of entertain out of it. Um, Maybe just talk to me a little bit about sort of the importance of this community for you.
So the first year and a half I was doing van life, I was all by myself. I started to follow people on Instagram, but it was still kind of a solo journey. And I think I knew when I started out that I kind of needed to just take some time to, get to know myself again and just kind of transform from your old lifestyle of, go, go, go and kind of just assimilate into the new lifestyle. So I think that was for me that was important. And I'm someone in general that I recharge by being alone, not by being with other people. So for me, being with other people is enjoyable and it's necessary, but it's an energy expense, right? So I have to be in the place for that. So after the year and a half, I started to really work on finding community and going to events, going to nomad gatherings and stuff. And um, for me, it was really cool because everyone you meet, they're not really a stranger. They're just a friend you haven't met yet, right? And so everybody, no matter what, you have certain things in common with them. And I think this lifestyle really humbles you. And so most of the people you meet that have been doing it for any amount of time, they're just generally, kind of relaxed, kind of humble, kind of friendly. And that's something I didn't find, in my regular life, right? Where everybody's too busy to hang out and you go home every night after work and watch TV and nobody wants to do anything. And in the van life, it's opposite because everyone's just hanging out with nothing to do. And so there's a lot more community and engagement.
That's interesting. Yeah. So, you've been doing this for 4 years now. I mean, you must love it and you must get some enjoyment out of it or some meaning. I'm curious, you mentioned some of the problems in your life prior to van life. I'm curious what problems van life solved for you and what problems kind of continued on even though you made the lifestyle switch.
I mean, it solved the problem it definitely reduced my stress. For me, I was constantly answering emails and on my phone, and I always felt like I was never really off the clock, because I was a business owner, and so I'm always replying to clients and sending bids at 11 p.m. and so all that stopped, which was wonderful because then I felt like once again I was in charge of my life and not just serving clients. So that was my main issue was just having that freedom. I think freedom is probably the word, and then being connected to nature. The last 3 years, the business I had, I was in a warehouse, 6 days a week, behind concrete walls. And it was, for me, I realized how important nature is. It was pretty depressing, honestly, to be in there. So just being able to wake up with the sun shining and, go for a walk right out your back door, was priceless. Um, and then I guess the things I guess then there's always new issues, right? So there's a new set of challenges that come up with any situation. So for me with van life, I guess the new set was kind of figuring out how to now balance, the relaxation and the enjoyment with having to do work. Because now it's kind of hard to like, okay, I got to go edit this video, I got to go update a website. Especially when some places you're traveling, there's no internet. That's probably a big thing. Is I like to do a lot of like deep in the mountains, off grid stuff, and so then you're disconnected from the internet, and so that's been a challenge for sure.
Speaking on that, you mentioned sort of living off savings for the first year, but now what do you do to support yourself financially while living in the van?
So this is another story where the universe just kind of delivered for me. And so at this point, I was looking for work, and I was in a couple Facebook van life groups, and I met this guy on a Facebook group, and he was like, "Hey, there's a post on another Facebook group, and it's a van lifer looking to hire a photographer and videographer to travel with them." Excuse me. And so I went and checked it out and applied, and it turned out to be a job for Bob Wells of Cheap RV Living. And so if anybody watches van life YouTube videos, you've probably come across the, Santa Claus looking guy telling you you can live in a van for free, that type of stuff. So he's really the OG of van life. He's been doing it over 10 years. And so he hired me to be his personal videographer. And I didn't have any formal training. I had my own content I was creating just based off, playing around as a hobby. And but yeah, and he hired me, and so I traveled with him for about 9 months, and that's where I really met a bunch of community. I did a couple events with him. I helped grow his YouTube, and so that was my first paid job. Was working with him, and that was a great opportunity. After that ended, I did a couple other just kind of odd jobs because now I had this kind of portfolio of skills. So I did some other video stuff, some photo shoots. And so now what I'm doing is I've started a new website of my own. It's called Vanlife RX, and I'm helping other people that are interested in van life get into the experience. So I'm hosting some courses and doing some online learning to kind of help people. And what I'm trying to do is provide a shortcut, right? So that people don't have to, watch 100 hours of YouTube videos and have conflicting information. And there's one person with experience that they can reach out to. So that's what I'm doing now, is kind of coaching others.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm curious to know a little bit about more about you. I'm always wondering sort of the different types of people that end up living in vans. It tends to be all sorts of different people with different backgrounds, but I'd love to hear about your background a little bit. What was it like for you growing up?
That absolutely helped the transition to van life. So I grew up on a farm, and so already I was pretty used to just being physically uncomfortable, in the sense of like getting up at 5 a.m. and going out in the snow and like feeding cows, and just being outside a lot, being in the dark, like a lot of fears that I think other people might have about being alone or about animals, like all that kind of stuff. Like, it didn't bother me. And then on top of that, we would do a lot of road trips as a kid, and my dad had a pickup that had like this like a camper set up in it. And so we would go on long road trips and we would sleep in the back as a family. And so already, I kind of was introduced to the idea of sleeping in a vehicle on a street, in a strange city, and not worrying about, people outside, and that type of stuff. So definitely the upbringing helped me out a lot.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of your personal beliefs that help you in your life when you're feeling low?
So I think the biggest belief for me is I have to remember that it's the contrast that provides an exciting life, right? So if things are always smooth and easy, eventually that becomes your baseline, and then there's no excitement, right? So in order to kind of have these big exciting moments, you also have to capture the lower end of that as well. So it's like a big sine wave. At least that's been my experience, right? So when I'm down at the bottom of that wave, I just have to remind myself. And now that I have 4 years of riding this wave, I remind myself, like, the worse it gets, the lower I go, the higher I'm going to bounce. So, and it's, I do deal with anxiety at times, and depression, and all the normal thoughts that other people experience. But it's really just the trusting that, things will always be, ultimately be better.
Yeah, for sure. And how has your social life changed from when you were living in sort of a normal house, running your business, compared to now that you're living in a van?
The funny thing is, I actually have more friends now than I did when I was living my regular life, just because I was so busy. And then when you're at that level, all the other acquaintances you have, they're like business people, and they're all busy. And so there's no time to get together, right? And so I actually, now that I'm doing van life, like I'll go to an event out in the desert and just hang out for 10 days, and you're just sitting outside in a camp chair talking with friends. And so I have way more friends now, and more quality social interaction. It's not meeting up at a bar and complaining about your clients. It's being out in nature, and appreciating the experience.
That does sound much better, I gotta say. What do you think, what have been some of the most memorable van life experiences that you've had so far, you think?
I've had a lot. It's always easier for me to remember the most recent, just because it's a long list, right? There's been a lot of cool. There's like moments in time where I'll recognize as they're happening, like, this is a little moment in time. It'll never happen again. Just the people, the settings, everything. It's just amazing, and so you just want to really appreciate it while you're in that moment. And so the most recent one, I was in Austin, Texas, and I went to this park right downtown, Zilker Park, and I didn't know anybody in Austin, but I just saw a bunch of other van life people down there. So we got to chatting and meeting up, and I just kind of hung out with these guys for a few days. And I ended up helping one of them on his van repair his starter solenoid. And so we're fixing this van at like 9 o'clock at night in the middle of the park. And I'm down inside the engine bay. I'm covered in grease, like up to my elbows. It's on my face, and it's humid, not crazy, but so I'm sweaty, and there's like mosquitoes. I have mosquito bites, and I'm just filthy. And by the time we're done, it's like 11 o'clock. There's three of us, and you're so sweaty and hot, like you can't sleep like that. And we don't have showers, so we're like, what are we gonna do? And so my one of the guys that was with me, he's like, "Hey, there's a water faucet over by the volleyball court. It's a sand volleyball court, so they use like a hose to like water down the sand." And so I grabbed the hose out of my rig and some Dawn dish soap and a towel, and all three of us, 11 o'clock at night in the city park, we ran over to the volleyball court, plugged in the hose, and we like took turns spraying each other down and like shooting us with soap, and just we were just laughing at how ridiculous it was. And these are like three grown men in their mid 30s, just having a good time, just being ridiculous in the park. And I'm like, these are the things you're missing out on if you live in a condo.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it can be wonderfully spontaneous, this life of living in a van for sure. Um, so you mentioned there you don't have a shower. What do you normally do? I mean, there's not always a tap and two other guys to help you shower down, but what do you normally do for showers and for also your toilet as well?
When I started in my van, I worked with Bob Wells, the OG of van life, and he'd been in his van 10 years. No shower, no official toilet. So that's like I grew up, or I like learned that way. So for me, it was just natural. So honestly, I was traveling solo, and so it's just me and my stink. And so, I'll go for a week and a half without a shower, just kind of like wet wipes, at night to kind of clean the key spots. And what I found is over time your body kind of acclimates. So you're not producing as much oil and all the other things that your body's working to replenish because they're stripped away in your shower. So actually if you kind of just let it run for a while, everything balances. So I just don't shower often, and I'll go to, depending where I'm at, I'll find a park shower or a gym, or truck stops actually have really nice showers. So like Pilot, travel centers, those types of things, I'll buy a shower. Um, or like YMCA's have showers. So you kind of learn, right, where to find them at, and you get good at it. And and then as far as a toilet, I also, it's the same thing where I pretty much am just always set up in a way that there's facilities around. You use public bathrooms, or if I'm out like camped deep in nature, then you'll just dig a hole and you'll do it that way. And then I do have like an emergency bucket toilet that has like liners that you can just use and then tie up and throw away. So I got options, but really in all my years of traveling, that bucket toilet is like, it's not often used. I mean, you'd be amazed at how you adapt, and you just find stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's one thing about van life and just about people is, we're just very adaptable as a species. And so we can really adapt to much different lifestyle than I think most people are accustomed to today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've noticed as more new people are looking to van life coming from traditional living, the main concern is, where do you shower? How do you go to the bathroom? And I just our ancestors didn't, they didn't shower every week, and they didn't have, necessarily access to toilets all the time. So it's definitely possible, right? We're at the end of the day, I feel like we're just a more evolved animal, right? So we can make it happen.
Absolutely. So what do you think is the biggest benefit for you living in a van?
What I really love is the freedom. I really like being able to relocate. I like not being confined to a specific state or city. I like being able to travel with the good weather. So I typically go to the desert Southwest in the winter, and then in the summer I go up north, where the weather's good. So you're kind of just always always living in the good weather. I think that's just a huge benefit for me is to be able to move around.
And what do you think are the biggest challenges that you faced in this lifestyle?
For me, the biggest challenge, honestly, it has been nailing down a consistent location independent income. And so that's new to me now that I've started this new website. I finally like narrowed it down and figured out, okay, this can be my income stream. And so up until now, I've just been stitching together odd jobs. And that's really what I was trying to figure out is how I can have something that's stable.
Yeah, that's definitely a big challenge for a lot of people getting into this lifestyle. But I mean, it's getting easier and easier as technology gets better and there's more remote work. I think it's becoming a more viable option for more people, I think.
Absolutely, and that's something I've been seeing a lot, is now that all of a sudden so many jobs have gone remote, that there's now more people that have like, legitimate healthy incomes that can now do this lifestyle. So it brings in kind of a whole new segment of people. And in fact, the lady I sold my last build to had just got a remote job. And so she was, because she was working remote now, she wanted to get out and not be stuck, in her home working. So I agree.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you can do it, you might as well get out there. It's a fun world out there for sure. What kind of areas do you find to park?
So I like all the different types of parking and camping. So I like the complete remote boondocking where you're totally independent and you're out on like government land where you can stay in America. They have land that's owned by the Bureau of Land Management, so you can stay on the public lands up to 14 days at no charge. So there's a lot of that in the Southwest. So all winter we're staying for free on this public land. Um, and then other than that, I don't like paying for places to park. So I don't go to national parks. Sometimes I'll do a campground if they have a shower and I feel like I want to do a shower. But other than that, I like city camping as well. So I always do my builds to be as stealth as possible. And the box truck that I'm in now really looks like a business vehicle. I tried to make it, I put a logo on it and it doesn't look like a traditional, converted van. So I'll park anywhere in the city on the street.
Do you tend to find like industrial areas are better, or you can really just park anywhere with your box truck?
I really can, yeah. I mean, I've stayed in residential neighborhoods, and the more that you do this lifestyle, you'll realize you're more nervous about people recognizing you than other people are paying attention to you. People are busy, they're on their phone. And so, even when I was in my van, which was the most obvious vehicle that someone's living in it, I never got hassled. And I would stay in residential neighborhoods, I'd park on the street. But definitely commercial areas are the easiest because there's going to be trucks parked on the street. And actually, one of my things I do when I'm coming into a new place and I don't have a spot picked out yet is I'll stay in parking lots of like mechanic shops because mechanic shops always have new vehicles being parked. People drop off their vehicles at night. And so people don't suspect if there's just some random vehicle there, they're just assuming I'm waiting to get worked on. So I've had a lot of success staying in mechanic parking lots.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that before. That's an interesting way of doing it. So it sounds like you're able to find some good places, but have you ever gotten the knock before?
I've only got the knock once and in 4 years once, and I was gonna stay in this hotel parking lot. That's another one I do a lot. It works out very well, but it was a small hotel, there was, like, nobody there, and so the manager of the hotel, like, the front desk looked into the parking lot, and so she saw me pull in and park, and she just came out and she was like, "You can't stay here if you're not renting a room." So, that was it, but never, like, the knock from the police or anything.
Yeah, that's pretty easygoing. In most cases, anyway, it's just somebody asking you to leave, and you just carry on and find somewhere new anyway.
Exactly.
Where do you think you would be now in your life if you hadn't gotten into that first van that you bought?
I don't think I would be in a good place. I really feel like this is what I want to do. And any other solution would have been, just another job in the city. It would have been another version of the same. And so I really think it saved me and it provided me with some much needed nature therapy. So I don't think I'd be in a very good place, honestly.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it sounds like it was a needed change. What do you think van life has like taught you about yourself?
I think it taught me that I'm a lot more resourceful than I thought, and that things always work out. You know, especially even when things feel like they're not working out or they're not going the way you planned. It seems like sometimes I feel like I'm kind of on a track almost that's in a way been set out for me, right? And so I'm just kind of riding this track, and then you'll have options along the way. You can go left or right, but I feel like I'm kind of being pulled through this experience, and so I've kind of learned to just trust the process and kind of roll with it.
Interesting. That's cool. So you mentioned earlier that your build was sort of a minimalist type vibe. Was minimalism something that was interesting to you prior to getting into the van, or was that because like no matter what, getting into a van, you sort of have to downsize. You have to start thinking about your possessions and like the importance of them and getting rid of them. Was minimalism something that you were interested in before van life, or was it sort of a little bit forced on you because of living in a van?
It was absolutely something I was interested in. I watched that documentary that everyone's probably seen on Netflix. I think it's called Minimalism, but it's about these two guys that, did the same thing. They left their jobs and they minimalized their life. And the guy has like one belt and two pairs of pants. And, he's pretty extreme. Like everything he owns fits in a backpack. So as a van lifer, I don't think you can quite get that minimalist because you kind of have to be able to support yourself. You can't rely on a lot of the public services that these guys do when they're in the city. But I was definitely excited to get rid of possessions. And when I was finally downsizing to get in the van, if you've ever moved or relocated, you always have this stuff that like you're holding on to and you don't really use it, but you don't want to get rid of it. And so you just take it from one place to another. And so, I was finally at the point where I was like, I can't take this stuff with me. And so I ended up just getting rid of all this stuff that I'd had since childhood. I had like sports cards and bobbleheads and just all this junk. And I just got rid of all of it. And it felt really good.
It felt good to get to like sort of get rid of things.
It did because it's like it's this stuff that you're like, you don't really need it, but you feel guilty about getting rid of it because there's kind of this attachment. But then when you have this kind of this scapegoat of like, well, I have to get rid of it. So then it's like it kind of takes the stress off you. Like, well, I had no choice; it had to go. And so for me, it helped facilitate the process of unloading, all those items.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and then was it sort of freeing to have less possessions to think about? Was that part of the feeling as well?
It was, especially even the day to day, like, just getting dressed. I have like 4 pairs of pants, half a dozen t-shirts. So you just, you grab something and you go. And so I feel like possessions really take a back seat, and you're not spending as much time thinking about your stuff. It all has utility, everything serves a purpose. And even when it comes down to like doing dishes, like I have one bowl that I use, 2 forks. So I'm not like stacking up piles of dishes and then spending an hour cleaning. And so a lot of the time that you spend maintaining that regular lifestyle kind of goes away. You're not spending all day Sunday doing laundry.
Interesting. So it's a simpler life, which means that you can have a little more time to do other things. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I think that's what it's about. Yeah, is really, the minimalism side of it. It just frees up your time to do and maybe to do nothing, right? Like maybe you're just sitting in a chair watching the wind blow the trees, and you can do that because you don't have to worry about all these other chores you have to do.
Makes sense. So I think there's a perception online for people that are maybe not too deep into understanding what van life is that that it's very kind of glamorous, that there's sort of like you're always going to be parked at a nice sunset, things like that. I'm curious what your opinion is or what your thoughts are on sort of the realities of van life versus sort of the hashtag van life that's online.
Absolutely. So the thing people have to keep in mind is whatever you're doing in life, if you do it frequently, it becomes routine. And so if you're waking up every morning to a beautiful sunrise, even that becomes routine. And then you still have all your other, regular thoughts and anxiety that pop up. So it's not an escape, right? It's you still have to deal with whatever you got going on. But there's definitely amazing moments, and I've had so many more of those since joining van life. Just last month, I woke up. I had this super awesome moment where I woke up at this campground in Texas, and I just opened my back door, and it was like I woke up early just naturally. So I don't have an alarm clock buzzing, but I woke up, I opened the door. There was a beautiful sunrise coming up. There was like it's pretty humid in Texas, so there was like this kind of fog that was like kind of rising up off the ground, and the wind was kind of blowing, but the temperature was good. And I was just laying there like, this is incredible. This is just such a nice moment in time. And so, these are the moments that people share on Instagram. And every morning's not going to be like that. But the mornings you have like that, they're very powerful.
Oh man, that sounds amazing. I can't wait to get back on the road. It's been too long for me. So that just really inspires me to get back out there for sure. What have been some of the unexpected realities of van life that, or maybe some expectations that you had getting into it that didn't, that were a little different than what you thought?
Getting into it, I wasn't too sure what to expect. I guess okay, so one thing that I definitely realized is it takes longer to do the chores you do have to do while you're on the road. So, making food takes longer. You have limited space, and so you're like washing stuff in the sink and then taking it out and then putting the cutting board in the sink and then you're cutting stuff and then you're removing the cutting board to wash something. So making food takes longer, cleaning up takes longer. When you do have to do laundry, you have to drive to a laundromat and then you're at a laundromat for a couple hours. So, you can spend a good portion of your day kind of doing these normal routine items that would be very fast when you're in a house with unlimited hot water and much more space. So I think I was a little surprised by the amount of time you have to spend doing chores.
Right. So there's sort of the unexpected, um, yeah, just the change yeah, like you said, I guess the chores taking longer, but then it's sort of made up in other ways as well. That time saving, right? What kind of advice do you have for somebody that's interested in getting into van life?
So my number one advice is if you feel called to do it, you should absolutely try it. And so, if that even means whatever vehicle you have, I have a friend that lives in a two-door car, right? And so whatever you have, if you throw in a mattress pad and just go try it out. And because it is about getting out there and experiencing it. And I see a lot of people that want to get into it and they get caught up in like, what vehicle am I going to get? And they're designing the vehicle and they get caught up in all the glamour of it, but they don't even know if they're going to like it or how they want to live. Because whether you want to just live in a city or go out and be alone in the wilderness, you'll need a different setup. You'll need different water capacity. There'll be a lot of variables. So it's important to try it first and see if you like it. And then if you feel called, then you can figure out, how do I make this happen?
Yeah, try it before you buy it. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
What's next for you?
Literally this weekend, I'm going back to Schoolie Palooza. It's like a 2 week event, and so I'm going to go back and catch the last weekend of it, hang out with the Nomad family again. And then in March 12th and 13th, I'll be at Tiny Fest San Diego. So I'll be hanging out there, meeting some new people, and giving tours of my box truck. So it's always exciting to meet more people and just be involved in the movement.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And where can people follow you if they want to check out more about what you're doing?
So the best thing is to go to my website, vanliferx.com. And I'm like mentioned earlier, I'm teaching classes. I have a free class coming up February. I believe it's February 23rd. And so they can sign up for that, and it's going to be kind of an intro to van life, right? Like what lifestyle might you like to choose? Do you want to live in the city? And so I'll be kind of walking people through those options, and it's a free class to sign up for. So if they go to the website, they can drop an email and then I'll incorporate them in whatever things are happening. And I'm going to be hosting some live in-person meetups. So if they want to come out to Arizona and hang out and talk van life, they can find all my social and all my information from the website.
Awesome. Thanks so much for talking with me today, Nomad Brad. It was awesome to have you on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you reaching out to me, and it was fun.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching and listening. I sure hope you enjoyed this episode of Van Life and Chill. There's a new one every single Thursday. It's available on all podcast platforms.